When you're editing a video, it's very common to need to change the speed of the video clip for technical reasons like timing with the music or fitting a video clip into the overall edit. You might also want to change the speed of a clip for visual effects and impact. Think about the way the Matrix slowed down the famous bullet dodging scene to really highlight the speed of the way the bullets were moving and the way Neo was avoiding them. So if you need to know how to change the speed of a clip in Davinci Resolve 17, then stay tuned, as in this video I'll be showing you how to perform a constant speed change in a couple of simple ways. So just before I leap into the tutorial, I want to say welcome back to the channel if it's not your first time here. It's great to see you again. If you haven't already, do consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell icon to be notified when we release a new video. On the other hand, if you're new here, then hello. Welcome, my name is Alex and I'm a certified Davinci Resolve trainer and video producer. And over the last decade, I've been helping businesses, entrepreneurs and content creators do more with video, and in particular, Davinci Resolve. So if that's awesome sauce for your ears, then do check out some of the other videos on the channel. And if it floats your boat, then do join us by subscribing to the channel. It would be so gratefully appreciated. Okay, let's look at how we can change the speed of a clip in Davinci Resolve. Now bear in mind that in this video, I'll be covering how to perform a constant speed change for the video clips in your media pool or timeline. If you're here for variable speed changes or speed ramping as it's called, then that's coming in another video very shortly, and I'll pop a card here and a link in the description as soon as it's available. Equally, I'll be looking at high frame rate footage in that video, so we'll be getting into buttery smooth slow motion then. Let's do some speed changes. So here we are in Davinci Resolve 17. I'm currently in the edit page. A lot of the techniques I'm going to show you can also be applied in the cut page as well, but the edit page I think is just a better place to look at this overall. So you can see that I have a clip of a waterplane just taxiing for takeoff, and the camera pans round here. It's a 6-second shot and I've marked it out with an in and an out on the timeline. Let's just play it back in the source viewer using the spacebar key or any of the transform controls here. Great. So you can see that the beginning clip, the plane is looking directly at the camera and then it slowly moves around and it gets ready to take off. So this is our clip. We're going to add it down onto the timeline. We can do that just by dragging it down. In this case, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to position it where I want it. So there we go. It's now showing up in our program viewer or our timeline viewer over here on the right. As we play back through this clip, you can see that it moves around and it's quite nice, but it's also a little bit quick. And actually this is kind of a dramatic part of our scene. So we want to slow this down to accentuate that dramatic action. So how do we go about doing that? Well, there's a couple of different ways. Let's look at the first one. Simply select the clip, come up to clip, and then come down to change clip speed. Just ignore this shortcut, by the way. It's a custom shortcut, so just ignore it because unless you've set one yourself, there isn't actually a default change clip speed shortcut. So change clip speed, and we get the change clip speed dialog popping up here. So here we have the dialog box, and we're going to use this to change the speed of this particular clip. We can either do that by entering in the percentage of the speed change that we want to make. We can also change the frames per second if we wanted to do that, and if you knew what that was. Now, in some cases that will be easy, in some cases that will be a little bit more awkward to calculate. So for the most part, I recommend just changing the speed percentage here. In this case, I'm going to go to 50%. So we're going to slow the clip down by half. Just before I click off anywhere else, notice that the duration here is 14 and 17 frames, so 14 seconds and 17 frames. When I click off, you'll notice that that changes again to show you that we have changed the speed of the clip. I'm going to come back to these options in just a second, but for the most part now we're ready. I'm just going to hit change. Simple as that. We've now changed the clip, and if I play it back to show you, it's now playing back slower. And equally, when we get to the end of the clip, you'll notice that it's not quite in the same finishing position that we were a minute ago. But what's interesting to note is that we haven't changed the duration of the clip or the timeline at this point, because if I just undo for a second, you'll see that was the previous finishing frame when it was actually playing back at full 100%. If I now go and redo that change, and this is another way that we can get up that change clip speed dialog box, is to simply select the clip, right click, and come up to change clip speed and select it. And when we have that, we get the same here. Now again, let me just change the speed again for you to 50%. Because I haven't got the ripple sequence dialog checked here, when I hit change, as you can see, the clip doesn't change its duration in the timeline, and the timeline itself doesn't change. Obviously, this could be very useful if you've already got that clip in the timeline and you want to change its speed, but you don't want it to necessarily move its edit points. So there we go. You can also see that down here, we have a little icon to denote that we've got some clip speed changes being going on here, or even some retiming. So that just denotes that that's there. And if we play it back, you can see again, nice and slow, playing back 50 frames per second. but we haven't changed the duration. Of course, if I wanted to, I could simply get the end of the clip and then drag the clip out to at whatever point I wanted to. So in this case, if I wanted to go to 12 seconds, that would be roughly the same kind of clip that we had before. So you can see how that works. And I've slowed the clip down. So there was one way, up to the clip menu, change clip speed, making sure the clip's selected, or you can right click and go change clip speed. Let's just take a quick break there and be sure that you're still with me. Everything making sense so far? Cool. Remember, any questions that you have, please drop them in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you'd like a faster and definite answer to your question, then consider heading over to our Buy Me a Coffee page and becoming a supporter or a member there. I prioritise supporters and members of the channel when it comes to answering questions, and there's also a bunch of other cool stuff that might be of interest for you too. Okay, with that said, let's jump back in. I'm just going to back up for just a second. So back to 100% speed here. The other option is go to the inspector. And so up in the top right corner, we've got the inspector, just simply click it to open it. And in Davinci Resolve 17, we now have the new speed change options. If they are not showing for you, simply click on the banner and you can see the speed change controls are here. This is very, very similar to the same speed change dialog box we've already seen. So this is also a great way of changing the clip speed, because again, simply we can change the clip speed in here, 50%, or you can use your wheel to change the speed to whatever you want. But here I'm going to just knock it to 50. There we go. And it's now 50. You'll notice the little speed change icons come back up and we've got a clip that's playing back at 50% of the speed. This also has some nice controls for us to be able to play the direction. So in the minute it was playing forward. If I wanted to simply reverse the clip's direction of play, I could do that by simply pressing this button, and now it's directed. You can notice how the inspector's changed to show minus numbers just to denote the fact that this is playing back in reverse. So that's also very helpful. If I was going to get to it through the traditional means of coming through the change clip speed, then you can actually see that we've got the reverse speed checked. So these two work very much in sync with one another. If I turn that off and hit change, you'll notice how the inspector's updated as well. So there are three different ways that you can access the clip speed very quickly indeed and change it and make it a constant speed change for the clip itself. You'll notice, as I said before, that we're respecting the points in and the out points of the clip on the timeline and not changing the duration. Of course, if you wanted that to happen, so it saves you having to drag the clip out, and because actually it wasn't the confines of the clip in the timeline that were important, but the actual shot that you've decided you want to show in your sequence from the beginning to end, then you need to make sure that the ripple sequence is checked. So let's just go back to 100 times, or to 100%. Then we're going to hit the ripple sequence button, and now we're going to change the speed to 50%. And click off, and you'll notice that the timeline has shifted and the timeline is now longer. The clip itself is also now longer, but we have the full in and the out of the clip that we originally brought into the timeline from the source viewer. So that's just important to note. If you have that ripple on in the speed change, that's what that's going to do. Equally, if I just undo again, making sure that's selected. If I do bring in, for example, another shot and it's in the timeline, let me just show you what that does if there's another clip in the timeline. So again, we want to change this clip, so select it, come up to the inspector, or right click, change clip speed, or come up to the menu and change clip speed that way. Do it in the inspector, let's change it by 50% again, and then click off, and you'll notice how everything's moved up to accommodate that particular clip. If, of course, I didn't have the ripple sequence on and I turned it to 50%, then again, it's going to respect the position in the timeline of our clip, not alter the duration, and again, not alter the clips next to it as well. So the nice thing about this is it's quite hard to accidentally overwrite anything, which is exactly what we want. Now, of course, you've probably all spotted that when I play this clip back, it looks a little bit bad. And in terms of the footage, obviously, as I said to you before, was not shot at a high frame rate. It was just shot at 23.967. So when we slow it down by that much, it's going to look quite obvious because unfortunately, the motion estimation at the minute is just working on a basic standard algorithm. So we need to affect that. And there is a great way of being able to do that inside Davinci Resolve. The first thing you can do is you can actually come to your project settings, which are down in the bottom corner here, or you can press Shift and 9 on the keyboard, and that will bring up your project settings. On the master settings, come down to where you see frame interpolation, and you'll see your ReTime process. And currently that's set to nearest, and the motion estimation is set to standard faster, which is the default. Now, we can obviously change that if we'd like to, as you can see here, by going to either a frame blend or an optical flow. Optical flow is a lot more processor intensive, but it's incredibly powerful, and it essentially helps make a much better blending and interpolation of the frames between the ones that we're missing to essentially come up with new frames. It's a little bit like an old program called Twixtor, which you may or may not have heard of, where you can get some incredibly smooth slow motion effects as a result from just standard frame rate footage. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just turn on the optical flow in this instance. Now, obviously, bear in mind, this is doing it for the project wide. And it might be that actually you've got some other clips that you've already retimed that don't need that optical flow. So just if you didn't need that, of course, you could change it at project level. But if you didn't need that, you also have the ability to come to the inspector, scroll down, and in the ReTime and scaling, you can see the ReTime process, the motion estimation, and the resize filter are all here for you. So in this case, ReTime process, we can set to optical flow, and currently we'll just leave it on the standard beta, which is the same as the project settings. What you'll notice is that this clip will now have to render, especially if you are already making sure you've got your render cache turned on to smart. But you'll see the blue bar comes up pretty quickly, and the clip should now play back nice and smoothly. Equally, we should have some nice smooth playback in terms of the slow motion. So that's really great. And it works very, very well in most cases. Occasionally, when you have optical flow on, it can throw up a few little odd distortion elements. If you have got that scenario happening, then what you can also do is change the motion estimation and go from the standard faster setting that we have by default in the project settings and change it to something else. Now, for the most part, the enhanced, faster, enhanced, better are very, very good, but the speed warp is absolutely the best. It takes an awful long time and it's very processor intensive if you're working on a slow machine. If you're working on a fast machine, it's not so bad, but I do highly recommend trying that out, especially if you're seeing any motion artifacting and so going on. Let me show you what I mean by that, just real quick. So let me come back to my timeline. Let me remove this clip, and I'm going to bring in this clip of this plane coming overhead. If I try and slow this clip down, let me do the same thing that we've done before. So I'm going to slow it down to 50%. And I'm going to watch this back. You can see it doesn't look great. It's not particularly smooth. So again, we're going to use the ReTime and scaling parameters, change the ReTime process to optical flow, and then we'll just let that render. Great, now that's rendered. Let's play that back. And you can see that for the most part, that's done a pretty good job. But just towards the end, you can just notice, if you look very carefully up this part here of the plane, how this affects. It doesn't quite all stack up. Let me show you through. You can just see it start to wobble a little bit. You can just start to see there, particularly, you've got some sort of ghosting going on there. So if we change that over and we put it on speed warp and let that process again. So here we go. So now I've just let that re-render. So I've got optical flow and speed warp processed now. And if I play it back, you can see how nice and smooth the clip's playing back. And equally, we're not getting this odd ghosting effect happening up here. Certainly not to the degree that we were having it before without the speed warp on. So speed warp, it is intensive. It is a little bit of processor time while you get it just to quickly cache. But once it does, it really does produce some pretty incredible results. And the way that we can also change the speed of a clip is to use the ReTime controls. Now, this goes a little bit more into when we would do a variable speed change, which will be coming up in another video, but right click, come up to the ReTime controls, or use Command R or Control R on your keyboard, and you'll get now the retiming controls pop up. And it's basically just a little bar at the top, and you get some additional controls in the timeline here. Now, the main one that you want to focus on in this video is the fact that we have currently you're showing clip at 100%. If you just look down here at the bottom, there's this little chap here, little disclosure triangle. When you click here, you get some options as to things that you can do with this particular clip. Again, you can change the clip speed, and you can set the speed that you want it to be changed to. So in this case, 50%. And you'll notice that that automatically zips up and changes the speed. And you can see now that we have the clip speed is changed to 50%. You'll also notice these yellow arrows that run along the top of the clip. This is denoting that the clip is playing from left to right and in a slower motion than standard. If I change that back to 100%, and if I just reset it to 100% in fact, you can see how this goes blue, and we now get 100% down at the bottom. So we've just again affected the speed change there very quickly. If I press the arrow once more, you'll notice there's some other options here, and I will come back to those in another video, but for now, that's a constant speed change, and you can do that via the retiming controls. Once you're happy, you can simply close those down, and again, we'll have the speed change affected there. Let me just dive back into that 1 second, change it back to 50% speed. There we go, like so. And I want to also show you another way that you can do this as well. So as well as changing the option here and setting the speed this way, what you can do is also come to the end of the clip. You'll see we have the normal controls here for the edit points. So we have the trim out and the roll. If you, however, move your cursor up to the top, you'll notice how this now changes and it becomes a left-right arrow. Now, when we're on this particular section of the clip in the timeline, if I click and drag, you'll notice now how my percentage underneath my clip header is changing to accommodate that speed change. So if I come back, for example, to 100, you'll also notice how my arrows change back to 100. I'm actually at 101 in this case, or I can drag it out again. If I wanted to slow it down and make it, say, 40%, I could do that too. And now I've just changed that clip to 40%. So it's now a speed change of 40%. The one small thing I would say be careful of if you're changing your speed that way is that whilst this shows 40%, if you notice I can drag this a little bit and it hasn't actually updated the percentage. Now if we come up to our speed change and look at what's actually happening up here, whilst this is telling us we're at 40% down here in the timeline, when we come up here and look at our speed change, you can actually see that we're at 39.63. Now this is a little bit of a fiddle, so again, if you want to be exact on your 40%, I'd highly recommend setting it directly in the inspector or even in the right click, change clip speed dialog box and setting it there as well. Just something to bear in mind. When we have the retiming controls open as well, there's another thing I just want to point out to you, and I'm going to set the clip back to 100% speed. Leave the retiming controls open, and I'm going to bring in another clip and dunk it in behind here. Now, I'm in the selection mode, which is the standard selection mode, so pressing A on the keyboard gets you that. Now watch what happens this time if I decide to change my clip speed by using this option here. And you'll notice if I come out to the full extent that I have actually overwritten the clip that was after the clip that I'm trying to affect. So if I just undo that, you'll see how I've overwritten it. This is obviously a problem if you're working in a timeline and you're doing your retiming here rather than say up in the inspector. For example, if I did it now in the inspector, it would actually just change it, but it won't ripple. So it's important to note that if you are changing your speed here in the retiming controls and changing your speed this way, or indeed dragging it out, you're going to overwrite the clip after the clip you're affecting, unless we come up and we enter the trim edit mode, which is T on your keyboard. But selecting that, and now when we do our drag, watch what happens. The clip actually ripples to accommodate us in the timeline. Equally, if I just undo that, equally if I just change the speed here instead to a fixed speed, say 50%, again, I'm not overwriting this clip accidentally. So it's quite important if you're going to use the retiming controls to do your clip speed change that you want to maybe be in the trim edit mode if you want rippling to occur. Because notice if I am in the selection mode and if I undo things, come back to the selection mode and do ripple sequence here and then try and affect it down here, it's not going to have anything to do with it. Those two are going to work independently. So just worth noting that that's a little bit of a gotcha and can sometimes catch you out if you're doing your retiming down here in the retiming window. Just before you go, I have a real world example of why you might want to change the speed of a clip in a timeline, and I wanted to share this with you to give this whole video a little bit more context. Also, it gives me a chance just to quickly let you know that if you enjoy this type of online learning, then I've just launched an early bird offer for the Davinci Resolve 17 courses that we're going to be releasing this coming summer. There are currently 5 different courses and they're all 50% off at the moment, but they won't be after they're publicly released. So sign up now to get the offer, and we'll begin releasing the content as soon as it's available, so you'll get an early look at all the course material as well. If you do want to grab yourself that, then thank you very much indeed for doing so. Now, let me show you this practical use case for changing the speed of a clip. So if we dive across to this timeline that we've got prepared here, this footage actually comes all courtesy of Blackmagic Design, and if you come and join us on our online courses that we've got just in the early bird phase just before we launch them, then you'll actually get access to some of this footage as well and be able to work with it and again follow along with some of the tutorials that we've got online. Let's just have a little look at this sequence, and particularly bear in mind we've got this little area here where we've got a marker and we've got a particular beat of music, and this is the point we want our title clip to come in. So let's just have a look here. So where we have that nice double bang beat, that's where we would like this particular clip to come in. So we like how our sequence is sitting, but we just want to retime things a little bit. And we've got a clip here in the middle that we've been working with before that we now want to retime just so that we can extend everything out a little bit and have this match up with the music. And the beauty is it's very easy to do. Obviously what we could do is we could use our clip speed, but bear in mind, remember, that's not going to change anything here for us in the sequence. If I just simply change the clip speed without ripple sequence on, and I change that to 50% and hit go, nothing's going to happen. So this is why it's important to make sure we have ripple sequence turned on. And now what I can do is if I start dragging this out, so I slow it down, you'll see how that's now moving and changing in the timeline. It's moving the other clips. So in this instance, it's quite handy. For example, we could get that just about right there. And now we've got a pretty good effort, and we've just retimed that clip ever so slightly. Bear in mind, obviously, it's going to look quite choppy because we haven't got our motion estimation set properly. So in this case, I could then just quickly change that to optical flow, let that cache. So there we go. You can see we very quickly made a speed change to this particular clip, which has helped us elongate our edit and match up our beat as well with the music and the title sequence as well. So that's a really great option and a way that we can use that clip speed change to not only make this clip look more dramatic, but also help it in the sequence and make the edit fit. Just going to back up one quick stage just to show you something I could have also done, because obviously that looked a little bit fiddly if you were watching me do that, and you'd be absolutely right. So let's look at the retiming controls again. So simply going to be Command R on the keyboard to open those up, or Control R if you're on a PC. You'll notice the dialog pops up. Now bear in mind, I want to make sure this ripples, because if I start affecting this speed change here, I'm going to overwrite what I've already done. I don't want that. So let's go to my T, or my trim selection mode. And now when I start dragging this out, if I put my playhead where I want it and start dragging this out, I can now very easily snap where I want to be. And in fact, I might need to just turn snapping off in this case to get it just bang on. There we go. Let go, and you can see I've slowed it down to 40%. I can just close these controls now. Obviously, again, bear in mind this is still going to look choppy, so we need to just change that back to optical flow. And then once that's rendered out, everything will work quite nicely. So there you have it, very easy indeed to change the speed of a clip in Davinci Resolve 17. And I hope that you found that video useful. If you did, then do take a second to just hit the like button for me, as it does really help YouTube understand that more people should be seeing the content. Also, remember to stay tuned for the next video on variable speed changes, or speed ramping, that will be coming very soon too. Otherwise, thanks so much indeed for taking the time to watch the video. Stay safe and well, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.